The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars like a silver city. Inside its gleaming halls, beings from across the galaxy walked together. Some had blue skin that sparkled like gems. Others moved on 6 legs with armor that looked like living metal. A few floated in the air without touching the ground at all. Today was special. Today was the day when the strongest warriors from every known species would compete. The winner would join the Galactic Defense Force, the most powerful military group in the universe. In the main assembly hall, creatures that looked like walking mountains talked with beings made of pure energy. The air buzzed with different languages being spoken at once. Automatic translators worked overtime to help everyone understand each other. General Vorth stood near the center of the room. He was a Vraxian, which meant he looked like a giant insect made of living crystal. His body was 3 meters tall and covered in sharp, glittering armor that had grown from his own bones. When he moved, the crystal plates clinked together like wind chimes made of diamonds. Next to him stood Commander Shiketh from the Kalari race. At first glance, Shiketh looked almost human, but then his body would flicker and become see-through. Sometimes he disappeared completely before coming back into view. The Kalari could phase in and out of normal space whenever they wanted. Floating above them both was mind loss of the Tauran people. She had a large head with no hair and skin that glowed with a soft purple light. Her eyes were completely white. She never touched the ground because her mind was so powerful she could make her body float. Right now she was making 3 metal chairs dance in the air around her just for fun. These 3 were among the most feared beings in the galaxy. Their species had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had conquered planets and destroyed entire fleets of enemy ships. So when the doors opened and Ambassador Ha-Jun walked in with his small group of humans, the reaction was not what Earth had hoped for. Ha-Jun was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and gray hair. He wore a simple blue uniform with Earth's flag on the shoulder. Behind him walked Commander Yuki, a woman with short black hair and a serious face. She carried a briefcase full of documents about Earth's military capabilities. The moment the aliens saw them, the whispers started. "Look how small they are," said a reptilian creature with scales that changed color. "They have no natural weapons at all," observed a being that looked like a walking tree with too many eyes. General Vorth's crystal face twisted into what might have been a smile. "So these are the famous humans we have heard so little about." He walked over to where Ha-Jun stood. Each of Vorth's steps made the metal floor ring like a bell. When he stopped, he towered over the human ambassador like a building over a mouse. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, little human," Vorth said. His voice sounded like rocks being crushed together. "We are very curious to see what your species thinks it can offer to our military forces." Ha-Jun looked up at the giant crystal warrior without showing any fear. "Thank you for allowing us to participate in the trials, General. Earth is honored to be considered for membership in the Galactic Defense Force." This made Vorth laugh, which sounded like breaking glass. "Considered? Oh, little human, you misunderstand. You are here for our entertainment. We wanted to see what the newest species in the galaxy looked like before they realized they were not ready to fight alongside real warriors." Other aliens gathered around to listen. Commander Shiketh flickered into solid form next to Vorth. "Tell us, human, what special abilities does your species possess? Can you phase through matter like my people? Do you have armor that grows from your bones? Can you move objects with your mind?" Ha-Jun shook his head. "Humans do not have those abilities." "Then surely you have advanced technology," said Mindloss from above. Her voice seemed to come from inside everyone's head instead of their ears. "Weapons that can destroy planets? Ships that can travel between galaxies in seconds? Our technology is adequate, but not at that level," Ha-Jun admitted. The crowd of aliens began to laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. Some laughed like hyenas. Others made noises like steam escaping from pipes. A few simply vibrated in ways that hurt human ears. "Then what?" asked Vorth, his crystal eyes glowing brighter. "Do you possibly think you can contribute to our forces? We protect entire solar systems from threats that could end civilizations. We fight enemies that exist in dimensions your species cannot even see. What could weak, small, powerless humans do to help us?" Commander Yuki stepped forward. Her voice was calm but firm. "General, perhaps it would be better to wait until after the trials before making judgments about human capabilities." This made the laughter louder. A slug-like creature that was as big as a truck slimed its way closer. "The trials are for warriors, human female. Your species will be eliminated in the first round." It would be cruel to let you continue. We appreciate your concern, Yuki replied. But Earth's representative will participate in all scheduled events. Shiketh phased through the floor and appeared right next to her. Representative? You mean one of you two will fight in the trials? This becomes more amusing by the moment. Hajun shook his head. Neither Commander Yuki nor I will be participating in the combat trials. Earth's champion has not yet arrived. High Chancellor Nexos chose that moment to enter the hall. He was the most powerful being in the Galactic Council. A creature so ancient that no one remembered what species he had originally been. Now he looked like a tall shadow wearing robes made of starlight. When he spoke, reality itself seemed to listen. The trials will begin in 3 standard galactic days, Nexos announced. His voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Each species will present 1 champion for individual combat assessment, followed by tactical scenario simulations. The being who performs best will earn the right to join the Galactic Defense Corps. He paused and looked directly at the human delegation. All species that wish to withdraw may do so now without shame. The trials are designed to test the absolute limits of warrior capability. They are not suitable for less developed participants. The aliens waited for Hajun to accept this graceful way out. Instead, the human ambassador stood straighter and spoke clearly. Earth's champion will be ready when the trials begin, Chancellor. We do not wish to withdraw. The hall fell silent for a moment. Then the laughter started again, louder than before. General Vorth bent down until his crystal face was level with Hajun's. Very well, little human. We will enjoy watching your champion learn why some species are meant to follow, while others are meant to lead. As the crowd of aliens dispersed, still chuckling about the foolish humans, Commander Yuki noticed something they had missed. Hajun was quietly typing something into a small communication device on his wrist. He entered a single code and pressed send. Somewhere in the darkness of space, a small ship received the message and changed course toward Nexus Prime. The real show was about to begin. 2 days passed on Nexus Prime. The alien champions spent their time showing off their incredible powers. In the training halls, the sounds of destruction echoed constantly as warriors practiced their deadliest techniques. General Vorth smashed through solid metal walls with his bare fists. Each punch left holes the size of dinner tables in steel barriers that were supposed to stop starship weapons. His crystal armor grew brighter with each impact, feeding off the violence. Commander Shiketh practiced his phase abilities by walking through laser grids that would have turned any solid being into dust. He moved like a ghost, appearing and disappearing at will. Sometimes he would phase only part of his body, letting deadly beams pass through his chest while his solid fist struck training dummies. Mindloss floated in the center of the largest training room, surrounded by hundreds of metal spheres. With just her thoughts, she made them dance in complex patterns. Then she crushed them all into perfect cubes without touching them. The sound was like thunder, but she never even opened her eyes. Other champions were just as impressive. Krev of the Molten Core people stood in a room heated to temperatures that would melt most metals. His rocky skin glowed red-hot as he practiced fighting in conditions that would kill other beings instantly. When he punched, his fists left trails of fire in the air. Zephys from the Wind Worlds moved so fast she was just a blur. She could run up walls and across ceilings as easily as walking on the ground. Her movements created small tornadoes that picked up everything not bolted down. The humans, meanwhile, sat quietly in their assigned quarters. Ambassador Hajun read reports on his tablet, while Commander Yuki organized files. They did not train. They did not practice. They just waited. This made the aliens even more amused. Look at them, laughed a centipede-like being with 100 arms. They are not even preparing. They have already given up. Perhaps they are meditating, suggested a floating jellyfish creature. Some weak species believe that thinking happy thoughts will make them stronger. The laughter followed the humans wherever they went. When Hajun walked to the cafeteria, aliens would point and whisper. When Yuki tried to access the station's database to study the trial rules, other beings would crowd around to watch her work and make jokes. She moved so slowly, observed a lizard warrior with scales that changed color with his emotions. Right now they were bright yellow with amusement. How can her species survive if they react to danger at such speed? But the humans ignored all the mockery. They ate their simple meals without complaint. They went to their quarters at regular times. They seemed completely calm, as if they were on a peaceful vacation instead of preparing for the most dangerous trials in the galaxy. On the 3rd day, everything changed. The docking bay alarms began to chime at exactly noon, station time. A new ship was requesting permission to board. The aliens barely looked up from their training. New arrivals happened constantly as more species sent observers to watch the trials. The ship that appeared on the viewing screens was nothing special. It was small, dark gray, and completely unmarked. No decorations, no symbols, no bright colors. Compared to the magnificent vessels of other species, it looked like a piece of space junk. The Vraxian ships were like flying palaces made of crystal and gold. The Kalari vessels could phase in and out of different dimensions, appearing as ghostly outlines one moment and solid metal the next. The Tauran craft were perfect silver spheres that seemed to bend light around them. This human ship looked like a tool. Simple, functional, and built for work instead of beauty. "Is that supposed to be impressive?" General Vorth asked when he saw it on the monitors. "It looks like something we would use to haul garbage." The ship docked with barely a whisper. No fanfare, no announcement, no ceremony. The airlock opened with a simple hiss of equalizing pressure. What stepped out was even less impressive than the ship. A single human male walked into the docking bay. He was not particularly tall or short. His hair was black and cut very short. His face was ordinary, the kind that would disappear in any crowd. He wore simple gray clothing that looked like a uniform, but with no decorations or ranks visible. He carried no weapons that anyone could see. No armor glowed on his body. No energy field surrounded him. He looked exactly like what he was, a plain human being. The few aliens who bothered to watch his arrival were deeply disappointed. "That is Earth's champion?" asked Chiketh, his voice full of disbelief. "He appears completely baseline. No modifications, no enhancements, no special equipment at all." The human walked through the docking bay at a normal pace. He did not try to look intimidating. He did not pose or flex his muscles. He simply moved from point A to point B like someone going to work. Mind Loss floated down from the upper observation deck to get a closer look. "I cannot sense any psychic ability from him. His mind is completely ordinary. How does his species expect him to compete against beings who can reshape reality with their thoughts?" Word of the human champion's arrival spread quickly through the station. Soon, aliens were gathering to catch a glimpse of Earth's representative. What they saw only increased their amusement. The human stopped at a directory display and calmly looked up the location of the registration office. He did not seem nervous or excited. He did not appear to be studying his surroundings for threats or advantages. He just wanted to know where to go. Krev, whose rock-like body was still glowing from his training session, approached the human directly. The molten core warrior was twice as tall and 3 times as wide as the newcomer. Heat radiated from his skin in visible waves. "You are Earth's warrior?" Krev asked, his voice like grinding stone. The human looked up at him calmly. "I am Teho. I am here to register for the trials." This simple statement made Krev laugh so hard that small flames shot from his mouth. "You? Against warriors like us? Little human, I could melt you to ash just by standing too close." Teho nodded politely. "That is certainly possible. Could you tell me which direction the registration office is?" The fact that this human seemed completely unconcerned about facing the most dangerous beings in the galaxy struck the aliens as either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Most decided it was stupid. As Teho walked toward the registration area, more aliens gathered to follow him. It became a parade of the galaxy's deadliest warriors trailing behind one ordinary human who seemed to have no idea what he was walking into. At the registration desk, a board clerk who looked like a cross between an octopus and a computer asked for Teho's credentials. "Name and species?" the clerk asked without looking up. "Teho. Human. Military designation and special abilities? United States Navy Special Warfare Operator. No special abilities." This made the clerk look up. All 8 of his eyes blinked at once. "No special abilities? No psychic powers, no enhanced strength, no natural weapons, no energy manipulation? None of those things?" Teho confirmed. The clerk's tentacles typed rapidly on his keyboard. "Sir, I am required to inform you that these trials are designed for beings with superhuman capabilities. The mortality rate for unenhanced participants is 97%. I understand. Perhaps you would like to reconsider. There is no shame in recognizing one's limitations." Teho shook his head. "Thank you for the warning. I would like to complete my registration, please." The crowd of aliens behind him was now openly laughing. General Vorth pushed through the group until he stood directly behind the human. "This becomes more entertaining by the moment," Vorth announced to everyone present. "The humans have sent us someone who admits he has no powers at all. Perhaps they think we will take pity on him and let him win." Tejo finished his paperwork and turned to leave. As he walked past General Vorth, the crystal giant reached out with one massive claw and grabbed the human's shoulder. "Tell me, little warrior, what makes you think you can survive even 1 minute against opponents like us?" Tejo looked up at Vorth's glowing crystal face without any sign of fear. "I guess we will find out tomorrow when the trials begin." Then he did something that shocked everyone present. He smiled. It was not a nervous smile or a fake brave smile. It was the quiet, confident smile of someone who knew something that no one else knew. General Vorth released his grip, suddenly unsure. There was something about this human that did not match his unremarkable appearance. As Tejo walked away, the aliens watched in confused silence. What kind of being walked into a gathering of the galaxy's most dangerous warriors with nothing but a smile and absolute calm? Ambassador Ha-Jun, who had been watching from the upper level, finally allowed himself to relax. Earth's champion had arrived. The real trials could begin. The morning of the trials arrived with great ceremony. The combat arena was a marvel that made even the most advanced alien warriors pause in respect. The floor could become any surface imaginable: desert sand, frozen ice, flowing lava, or metal grating. The walls could disappear entirely or close in like a trap. Gravity could be adjusted from weightless to crushing force. Above the arena, thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the observation decks. They had come to see the finest warriors from dozens of species compete for the honor of joining the Galactic Defense Corps. What they had not come to see was a human embarrass himself. But that promised to be amusing entertainment. High Chancellor Nexos floated at the center of the judges' platform. His voice filled every corner of the massive arena when he spoke. "Today we witness the trials that will determine which warrior is worthy to defend our galaxy. Each champion will face 50 combat drones programmed with the fighting techniques of our greatest historical warriors. The trial ends when all drones are destroyed or the warrior admits defeat." He paused and looked toward the competitors' waiting area. "Let the trials begin." The first champion to enter was Klex of the Vraxian Empire, General Vorth's own son. He was even larger than his father, standing 4 meters tall with crystal armor that sparkled like captured starlight. Each step he took left cracks in the metal floor. "Klex will show these other species what real power looks like," General Vorth announced proudly from the viewing box. The arena shifted around Klex, becoming a rocky battlefield under a red sky. 50 combat drones materialized in perfect formation around him. They were sleek metal warriors, each one armed with energy weapons and programmed with thousands of years of fighting experience. What happened next was exactly what everyone expected from a Vraxian. Champion Klex roared and charged straight into the center of the drone formation. His massive fist crushed 3 drones with his first swing. Energy beams bounced harmlessly off his crystal armor as he spun in a circle, his claws cutting through metal like paper. The drones tried to coordinate their attacks, firing in perfect sequence to overwhelm his defenses. But Klex simply absorbed the energy into his armor and used it to grow stronger. With each hit, his crystal plates glowed brighter and his movements became faster. In less than 6 minutes, all 50 drones lay in pieces around his feet. The crowd roared approval as Klex raised his arms in victory. Crystal fragments fell from his armor like glittering rain. 4 minutes and 37 seconds, announced the judge. A new arena record for pure destruction. Next came Shiketh of the Kalari. The arena transformed into a maze of mirrors and shadows, the perfect environment for a phase warrior to demonstrate his abilities. Shiketh did not charge like Klex had. Instead, he disappeared completely the moment the drones appeared. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. The drones spun in circles, trying to find their target with sensors that showed nothing. Then the real show began. Drones started falling apart for no visible reason. One moment they were scanning for enemies. The next moment their heads were rolling across the ground. Shiketh was phasing through the arena floor and walls, striking from impossible angles before disappearing again. He appeared behind one drone just long enough to tear out its power core, then phased away before its companions could react. He materialized inside another drone's chest cavity, destroying it from within before becoming intangible again. The watching aliens gasped in appreciation as Shiketh demonstrated why the Kalari were considered the finest assassins in the galaxy. When the last drone fell, he became solid again and stood calmly in the center of the arena. 5 minutes and 12 seconds, the judge announced. Flawless stealth technique. The third champion was Mind Loss of the Tauren. She did not even bother to enter the arena physically. Instead, she floated outside the energy barrier while her mind reached inside. The drones never had a chance to move. Mind Loss raised one hand and all 50 combat drones rose into the air. Helpless against her telekinetic power, she made a gentle squeezing motion and the drones compressed into perfect metal cubes. Their circuits and weapons crushed together like clay. 2 minutes and 8 seconds, the judge said, clearly impressed. Complete psychic dominance. More champions followed, each one demonstrating abilities that seemed godlike to human eyes. Zephys moved so fast she appeared to be in 50 places at once, destroying drones faster than they could track her movements. Krev surrounded himself with such intense heat that the drones' metal bodies melted before they could get close enough to attack. Each performance brought cheers from the crowd and respectful nods from the judges. These were warriors who could single-handedly conquer planets. They were living weapons shaped by evolution and enhanced by technology. Then came Teho's turn. The laughter started the moment he walked into the arena. He looked exactly the same as he had the day before, ordinary human male in simple gray clothing. He carried what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons and basic tools that most aliens did not even recognize. This should be brief, General Vorth commented to his companions. I almost feel sorry for the little creature. The arena configured itself into a standard battlefield, rocky ground with scattered boulders and metal barriers. 50 combat drones appeared in formation around Teho, their weapons already charging. High Chancellor Nexos began the countdown. Trial begins in 3, 2, 1. Begin. What happened next would be talked about across the galaxy for generations. Teho did not charge forward like Klex. He did not disappear like Shiketh. He did not use incredible powers like Mind Loss. Instead, he stood perfectly still for exactly 3 seconds, his eyes moving rapidly as he studied everything around him. Then he moved, but he did not move toward the drones. He moved toward a specific boulder, placed a small device against it, and dove behind a metal barrier just as the device exploded. The explosion was not large, but it had been placed perfectly. The boulder shattered, and its pieces struck a power conduit that ran beneath the arena floor. Sparks flew as electricity arced across the battlefield, creating false energy signatures that confused the drones' targeting systems. While the combat machines tried to recalibrate their sensors, Teho was already at his next position. He fired 3 shots from his projectile weapon, not at the drones, but at specific points on the arena wall where support struts connected to the main structure. The wall section collapsed inward, creating a chain reaction that brought down part of the ceiling. Debris rained into the arena, but Teho had positioned himself in the one spot where nothing would fall. The drones, however, found themselves caught in a rock slide that damaged several of them and trapped others under heavy stones. What is he doing? Asked Commander Shiketh, leaning forward in his seat. He is not fighting them directly. He is fighting the arena itself, observed Mind Loss, her psychic senses tracking Teho's movements. But why? They got their answer moments later. The damaged power conduits began to overload, sending energy feedback through the arena's systems. The drones, which were connected to the arena's power grid for their targeting and coordination systems, began to malfunction. Some started firing at each other. Others spun in circles as their navigation systems failed. A few simply shut down completely as their circuits fried. But Teho was not finished. While the drones dealt with system failures, he moved through the arena like water flowing around obstacles. He used the fallen debris as cover, always staying in the spots where the confused machines could not get a clear shot at him. When direct confrontation became unavoidable, something even more remarkable happened. Teho began to fight using techniques that looked familiar to the alien champions watching. Against a drone that used Vraxian combat patterns, he redirected its massive strength back against itself, just like General Vorth had seen Kalari warriors do to his own troops. Against drones programmed with Kalari stealth tactics, he used environmental awareness that seemed to predict exactly where they would appear. Most shocking of all, When a group of drones tried to coordinate a psychic pattern attack based on Tauran combat data, Tejo somehow anticipated their strategy and positioned himself to avoid it completely. He studied our trials, Mindloss whispered, her mental voice filled with something like respect. He watched each of us fight and learned our techniques. The arena fell silent except for the sounds of combat. Even the most arrogant aliens found themselves leaning forward in their seats trying to understand what they were witnessing. Tejo was not just destroying the drones. He was using everything around him as a weapon, the environment, the arena's own systems, even the drones programming against them. Every move was calculated. Every action served multiple purposes. When the last drone fell, the arena was completely transformed. What had started as a simple battlefield now looked like the aftermath of a war. Power conduits sparked. Debris lay scattered everywhere. Scorch marks covered the walls where redirected energy beams had struck. And in the center of it all stood Tejo, completely unharmed. The silence stretched for a full 10 seconds before the judge found his voice. 3 minutes and 49 seconds. All targets eliminated with 0 damage to the contestant. The number hit the crowd like a physical blow, faster than the legendary Klex, faster. The judges spent 3 hours analyzing Tejo's performance. They watched the recordings from every angle, checking for hidden technology or secret assistance. They found nothing that violated the rules, but everything that challenged their understanding of combat. High Chancellor Nexos finally returned to announce the results of the individual trials. All champions have demonstrated sufficient skill to advance to the tactical scenarios. His voice echoed through the arena. However, today we have witnessed something unprecedented in galactic military history. The crowd stirred restlessly. Many aliens were still trying to process what the human had done. The tactical trials will begin tomorrow. Each champion will face complex multi-stage operations that simulate real galactic conflicts. These scenarios will test not just fighting ability, but strategic thinking, leadership, and adaptability. As the announcements continued, small groups of aliens gathered to discuss what they had seen. The mood had changed completely from the morning's confident predictions. General Vorth found himself surrounded by other military commanders, all asking the same questions. How did he know exactly where to strike the power conduits? Asked Admiral Thex of the Zephyrian fleet. Those weak points are not marked on any public arena schematics. He observed the arena for exactly 3 seconds before moving, noted Colonel Vrex, whose crystalline features showed deep concentration. In that time, he must have analyzed the entire battlefield structure, power systems, and drone formations simultaneously. Commander Shiketh, who rarely spoke to non-Kalari, approached their group. The human used modified versions of our own combat techniques against machines programmed with our fighting styles. He somehow learned and adapted our methods in real time. Mindloss floated down to join the discussion, something she never did. I monitored his thought patterns during the trial. His mind processed information at rates that should not be possible for an unenhanced being. He was simultaneously tracking 50 individual opponents, analyzing their tactical patterns, calculating environmental factors, and planning 17 steps ahead. That is impossible, General Vorth declared. But his voice lacked its usual confidence. No organic mind can process data that quickly without technological assistance. Yet we all witnessed it happen, Mindloss replied. This human represents something we have not encountered before. Meanwhile, in the human quarters, Ambassador Hajun and Commander Yuki sat with Tejo as he calmly cleaned his equipment. How are you feeling about tomorrow's trials? Hajun asked. Tejo looked up from the projectile weapon he was maintaining. The individual combat was exactly what I expected based on the species profiles and arena specifications. Tomorrow will be more complex, but the fundamentals remain the same. Which are? Yuki prompted. Know your environment. Understand your opponents. Use every advantage available. Adapt when the situation changes. He returned to his weapon maintenance. The same principles we use in every operation, Hajun. Exchanged a look with Yuki. Sometimes, he forgot that what seemed miraculous to alien observers was simply standard procedure for Earth's Special Operations Forces. The next morning brought the tactical scenario trials. The testing environment was completely different from the combat arena. Instead of a single battlefield, participants would command operations across multiple, connected simulations that could change without warning. The first scenario was announced as a hostage rescue operation on a heavily fortified space station. The judges emphasized that success would be measured not just on mission completion, but on casualties, collateral damage, and time efficiency. Klex volunteered to go first, confident after his dominant performance in individual combat. The simulation began with Klex commanding a strike team of Vraxian warriors approaching the hostile station. His solution was exactly what everyone expected. Overwhelming force applied directly to the problem. Klex's team smashed through the station's outer defenses like a crystal hurricane. His warriors carved through blast doors with their natural weapons and absorbed defensive fire with their armor. When they reached the hostage compartment, they eliminated the guards in seconds. The mission succeeded, but the cost was enormous. The station's structure was severely damaged. Several sections lost life support. Most critically, the intense combat had resulted in the deaths of 12 hostages caught in crossfire. Mission completed in 18 minutes, the judge announced. Hostages rescued 38. Hostages lost 12. Collateral damage, extensive. The Vraxian approach had worked, but the price had been high. Shiketh took a completely different approach. His Kalari infiltration team phased through the station's hull without triggering any alarms. They moved like ghosts through the corridors, avoiding all contact with station personnel. Shiketh located the hostages and began extracting them through the same routes his team had used to enter. The operation proceeded flawlessly until the final extraction phase, when a guard patrol detected the hostages being moved through a corridor. The resulting firefight was brief but intense. Shiketh's team successfully defended the hostages and completed the rescue, but the compromised extraction meant that enemy reinforcements arrived before everyone could escape. Mission completed in 24 minutes, came the announcement. Hostages rescued 47. Hostages lost 3. Collateral damage, minimal. Better than the Vraxian result, but still not perfect. Mind Loss approached the scenario from an entirely different angle. Instead of sending physical troops, she attempted to use her psychic abilities to influence the situation remotely. Her plan was elegant. Mentally dominate the station commander and order the hostages released. Unfortunately, the scenario included advanced psionic dampening fields, limiting her range and effectiveness. Mind Loss managed to affect some of the guards, creating confusion that helped reduce casualties. However, without her full psychic abilities available, she had to rely on conventional forces for the actual rescue operation. Mission completed in 31 minutes. Hostages rescued 45. Hostages lost 5. Collateral damage, moderate. When Teho's turn arrived, he took longer than anyone else just to study the scenario parameters. While other champions had immediately begun planning their assaults, he spent 15 minutes analyzing intelligence reports about the station, its crew, the hostage takers, and the political situation that had led to the crisis. "Why is he wasting time reading?" General Vorth asked impatiently. "The hostages could be executed while he studies paperwork." What Teho had discovered in those reports was that the hostage situation was not what it appeared to be. The terrorists holding the prisoners were actually political dissidents protesting working conditions on the station. The hostages included both civilians and station management personnel. Instead of planning an assault, Teho began what he called a comprehensive campaign. His first action was to infiltrate the station's communication systems. But rather than gathering intelligence for an attack, he began sending carefully crafted messages to different factions within the terrorist group. To the younger dissidents, he sent evidence that their leader was secretly negotiating with station management for his own release, while planning to abandon his followers. To the more experienced terrorists, he provided documents suggesting that several of their number were actually undercover security agents. Within hours, the terrorist group was consumed by internal suspicion and paranoia. They began questioning each other's loyalty and motivations. Arguments broke out over strategy and objectives. While the hostage takers were distracted by their own conflicts, Teho made his move. But instead of sending troops, he sent a negotiator, himself, disguised as a neutral mediator from the Galactic Workers' Rights Commission. By the time he appeared at the station's main airlock, the terrorist leader was desperate for a way out of a situation that had spiraled beyond his control. His own people were turning against each other, and he no longer trusted anyone in his organization. Taeho presented a solution that gave everyone a way to save face. The dissidents would release the hostages in exchange for a guarantee that their workplace grievances would be addressed by an independent commission. Station management would agree to the investigation to avoid a violent confrontation. The entire crisis ended without a single shot being fired. Mission completed in 43 minutes. Hostages rescued 50 of 50. Hostages lost 0. Collateral damage none. Additional outcome. Underlying political crisis resolved through diplomatic negotiation. The judges stared at their displays in disbelief. Not only had the human achieved a perfect rescue, he had actually solved the problem that caused the situation in the first place. But the real shock came with the second tactical scenario. This time, the challenge was a large-scale battlefield command situation. Each champion would be given control of mixed forces from multiple species and asked to achieve victory against a superior enemy force. The other champions approached this logically, assigning roles based on their own species' strengths and traditional military doctrine. Vraxians formed the heavy assault units. Kalari handled reconnaissance and sabotage. Taurans provided strategic coordination and fire support. Their tactics were sound and their execution was professional. Each achieved victory, though with varying degrees of casualties and resources. The final trial was announced with great ceremony, but also with visible confusion among the judges. High Chancellor Nexos had spent hours in private consultation with the Galactic Council, trying to design a test that could properly evaluate what they had witnessed. The final trial will be a free-form demonstration, Nexos announced to the gathered crowd. Each champion may design their own scenario to showcase their ultimate capabilities. This is your opportunity to prove why your species deserves to lead the galaxy's defense forces. The alien champions were pleased with this format. It would allow them to demonstrate their greatest strengths without limitation. Klex chose to fight in a high-gravity environment that would crush most other species. The arena transformed into a hellish landscape where every step required enormous strength just to move. Combat drones were replaced with massive war machines that stood 3 times taller than even a Vraxian warrior. Under crushing gravitational force that would have flattened any other being, Klex moved like a force of nature. His crystal armor absorbed the pressure and converted it into power that made him glow like a living star. He destroyed war machines with single punches that created shockwaves visible from the observation decks. When the last machine fell, Klex had demonstrated why Vraxians were considered the ultimate heavy assault troops in the galaxy. Nothing could match their pure physical power. Shikith created a scenario that took place across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The arena became a maze that existed in several different layers of reality at once. His opponents were energy beings that could only be hurt by attacks from specific dimensional angles. Shikith flowed between dimensions like water, appearing in one reality to strike an enemy before vanishing into another plane of existence. He fought battles that most species could not even perceive, moving through layers of space-time that only the Kalari could access. His victory demonstrated why the Kalari were the galaxy's premier infiltration specialists. No defense could stop an enemy who attacked from dimensions that did not technically exist. Mind Loss chose to demonstrate pure psychic dominance. Her scenario involved commanding an entire battle fleet through mental connection alone, coordinating thousands of ships in perfect harmony while simultaneously fighting a psychic duel against an enemy mind mage. She floated motionless in the center of the arena, while displays around her showed space battles involving hundreds of vessels. Every ship moved according to her will. Every weapon fired at her command. At the same time, waves of mental energy crashed around her as she fought her invisible psychic opponent. The demonstration ended with total victory on both fronts. The enemy fleet destroyed and the hostile mind mage completely dominated. It was a display of mental power that few species could even comprehend. Each following champion created scenarios that highlighted their species' greatest advantages. They demonstrated abilities that seemed godlike, technologies that could reshape reality, and fighting techniques that had dominated battlefields for millennia. Then came Taeho's turn. His request shocked everyone present. Would like to face all the other champions simultaneously, in a neutral environment. The arena fell completely silent. General Vorth was the first to break it. "This is madness," he declared, rising from his seat. "No single being can face multiple galactic champions at once. This human will be killed in seconds." Other alien representatives voiced similar concerns. What Tejo was suggesting had never been attempted in galactic history. It was not just dangerous. It seemed like suicide. High Chancellor Nexos consulted privately with the other judges for several minutes. When he returned, his voice carried a note of warning. Champion Tejo, you understand that this request goes far beyond normal trial parameters. You would face beings who can manipulate gravity, phase through matter, control minds, and reshape reality. Are you certain this is your choice? Tejo nodded calmly. I am certain. Very well. Champions, do you consent to participate in this unprecedented trial? The alien champions looked at each other uncertainly. Fighting together against a single opponent seemed almost unfair, even if that opponent had demonstrated unusual abilities. Klex spoke first. I will participate, but only to end this quickly before the human is seriously injured. Shiketh flickered into visibility. The human has earned the right to choose his final test even if it proves fatal. Mind loss floated closer to the arena. His mind radiates absolute confidence despite the odds. I am curious to understand why. One by one, the other champions agreed to participate. They convinced themselves they were being merciful by ending the trials quickly, rather than letting the human face prolonged defeat. The arena configured itself into a perfectly neutral battlefield, flat ground with scattered obstacles, normal gravity, no environmental hazards that would favor any particular species. It was as fair as possible, which everyone knew meant it was hopeless for the human. 8 of the galaxy's greatest champions took their positions around the arena's perimeter. At the center stood Tejo, looking exactly as unremarkable as he had on the day he arrived. Trial begins in 10 seconds, Nexos announced. The crowd held its breath. Many spectators had closed their eyes, not wanting to witness what they expected would be a brief and brutal end to the humans' participation. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, begin. What happened next redefined every observer's understanding of combat. Tejo did not try to fight all 8 champions at once. That would have been impossible even for someone with supernatural abilities. Instead, he did something far more subtle and infinitely more clever. He made them fight each other. His first move was to position himself so that Klex's opening charge would carry the Vraxian directly toward Shiketh's phasing position. When Klex's massive fist struck empty air as Shiketh phased, the kinetic energy had to go somewhere. It went into the arena floor, creating a shockwave that disrupted Mindloss's psychic concentration just as she was attempting to dominate Tejo's mind. The mental backlash sent feedback through the psychic network she had been trying to establish with other Tauran-influenced champions. While Mindloss recovered from the psychic disruption, Tejo was already moving to his next position. He fired 3 precisely placed projectiles that struck obstacles near Zephys, creating debris clouds that interfered with her high-speed movement abilities. But those same debris clouds created perfect hiding spots for Shiketh to phase into, which he did instinctively. When Zephys accelerated through the area a moment later, she collided with the phasing Kalari at exactly the moment he was becoming solid again. The impact sent both champions tumbling, but more importantly, it created a cascade of unintended consequences as each champion's abilities began interfering with the others. Krev, seeing his allies in trouble, superheated the air around himself to clear the debris. The intense heat affected everyone nearby, including Mindloss, whose psychic abilities were sensitive to extreme temperatures. As the Tauran champion struggled with thermal interference, her mental shields wavered. This created an opening that Tejo used not to attack her, but to redirect her own psychic energy back toward the other champions. Soon the arena became chaos as 8 different supernatural abilities interfered with each other in ways that had never been tested before. Champions who had never fought together discovered that their powers were not designed to work in close proximity to other species' abilities. Throughout the confusion, Tejo moved like a conductor directing an orchestra of destruction. He never directly engaged any champion in single combat. Instead, he guided them into positions where their own abilities would create problems for their allies. Most remarkable of all, he began demonstrating techniques that incorporated elements from every species present. Against Klex's brute force attacks, he used redirection principles borrowed from Kalari phase combat. When facing Shiketh's stealth abilities, he employed environmental awareness techniques similar to Tauran psychic scanning. He is using our own methods against us. Mind Loss reported to the other champions through mental communication, but he is combining them in ways we never considered possible. The realization hit all the champions simultaneously. This human was not trying to defeat them through superior power. He was teaching them something about the nature of combat itself. Every technique they used, he found a counter based on methods borrowed from other species. Every strength they displayed, he showed them how it could be enhanced through cooperation with abilities they had never thought to combine. The battle gradually transformed from a fight into a demonstration. Tejo was showing the assembled champions how their individual capabilities could work together, instead of against each other. When Klex finally understood what was happening, he stopped his attacks and stood watching. One by one, the other champions also ceased their offensive actions, recognizing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Tejo stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by 8 beings who could have destroyed him instantly if they had worked together from the beginning. But working together was exactly what they had never learned to do. "This demonstration is complete," Tejo announced calmly. The arena fell silent except for the sound of 8 champion warriors breathing heavily from exertion and confusion. In the observation decks, alien military. The hours following the final trial were unlike anything in the history of galactic military competitions. Instead of celebrating victory or accepting defeat, the assembled champions found themselves engaged in the most serious strategic discussions of their careers. General Vorth, who had spent days mocking humanity's weakness, now sat across from Tejo asking detailed questions about human tactical doctrine. Commander Shiketh, whose people rarely shared information with outsiders, was explaining Kalari stealth techniques while learning about Earth's special operations methods. Mind Loss floated nearby. Her psychic abilities focused not on domination but on facilitating communication between species who had never seriously collaborated before. "Your demonstration revealed something we have been blind to for millennia," she said, her mental voice reaching all the champions simultaneously. "We have been so focused on perfecting our individual strengths that we never learned how those strengths could enhance each other." Ambassador Hajun watched these conversations with quiet satisfaction. This was exactly what Earth had hoped to achieve, though even he had not expected the transformation to be so dramatic. High Chancellor Nexos appeared at the center of the group, his ancient presence commanding immediate attention. "The judges have reached a unanimous decision regarding Earth's application to join the Galactic Defense Corps," he announced. The arena, which had been filled with animated discussion, fell completely silent. "However," Nexus continued, "we have concluded that the traditional framework for membership is inadequate for what humanity offers to our military forces." General Vorth looked confused. "What does that mean, Chancellor?" "It means that Earth will not be joining the Galactic Defense Corps as junior members or specialized troops, as we originally envisioned." Hajun felt his heart sink. Had they come so far only to be rejected at the final moment? "Instead," Nexus said, his voice carrying across the arena, "we are creating an entirely new position. Earth's representatives will serve as strategic integration specialists, with authority to coordinate multi-species operations and develop new tactical doctrines." The words hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. Integration specialists were not soldiers who took orders. They were commanders who created the orders that others followed. "You are placing humans in charge of our military operations?" asked Admiral Thex, his voice filled with disbelief. "We are recognizing that humans possess capabilities that complement our existing strengths in ways we never considered possible," Nexus replied. "Champion Tejo has demonstrated that the future of galactic warfare lies not in individual superiority, but in coordinated excellence." Kleck stepped forward, his crystal armor still showing scorch marks from the final trial. "Chancellor, I do not question your wisdom, but this human defeated us through trickery and clever positioning. How does that qualify his entire species for military leadership?" Tejo spoke for the first time since the judges had withdrawn for deliberation. "I did not defeat you, Champion Klex. I showed you how your incredible strength could be enhanced by working with Shiketh's stealth abilities and Mind Loss's psychic coordination. When you understand how to combine your powers with others, you become not just strong but unstoppable." He turned to address all the champions. "Each of your species has spent thousands of years perfecting one type of warfare. You have become the absolute best at what you do. But you have never learned what happens when the best of everything works together. Shikith flickered into solid form. The human speaks truth. When I tried to phase during the battle, I was thinking only of my own abilities. I never considered how my stealth could help Klex position his attacks more effectively, or how my psychic abilities could coordinate timing between all of us. Mindloss added, "We have always fought alongside each other, but never truly together." General Vorth's crystal features showed deep thought. "You are saying that our individual strengths are less important than our combined potential." "Your individual strengths are incredible," Teho replied. "But yes, when they work together, they become something greater than any single ability could ever be." Commander Yuki stepped forward from the observation area. "This is what humans learned during our own development. We had no natural weapons, no enhanced abilities, no special powers. We survived by learning from everything around us and finding ways to make different strengths work together." High Chancellor Nexus floated higher, addressing the entire assembly. "For too long, Galactic military doctrine has been based on the assumption that superior individual capabilities determine victory. Each species has developed their warriors to be the ultimate expression of their particular strengths. We have created specialists who are perfect at one type of combat." His voice grew stronger. "But the threats facing our galaxy are changing. Our enemies are learning to counter our traditional advantages. They study our methods and develop specific countermeasures for each species' abilities. What we need now are warriors who can adapt, who can learn new techniques rapidly, and who can help others adapt as well. We need military leaders who think beyond the limitations of single-species tactics." General Vorth stood slowly, his massive form towering over everyone present. "Chancellor, are you suggesting that humanity's weakness is actually their strength? I am suggesting that what we perceived as weakness, their lack of natural advantages, has made them into something we desperately need. They are the species that learns." Teho nodded. "On Earth we have a saying. The strongest person is not the one who never falls down, but the one who gets back up every time and learns something new from the experience." He looked around at the assembled champions. "Every human military unit trains constantly with different weapons, different tactics, different environments. We study every enemy we face and develop new methods to counter their advantages. We do this because we have to. We do not have the luxury of relying on one overwhelming natural ability." Admiral Thex, who had remained quiet throughout the discussion, finally spoke. "So when you faced our champions, you were not using some secret human power. You were doing what your species always does, adapting and learning." "Exactly. I studied each of your abilities during the individual trials. I learned how your techniques worked and how they might interact with each other. Then I used that knowledge to help you discover new possibilities." Mindloss projected a sense of amazement to the group. "The human was teaching us even while we thought he was fighting us." High Chancellor Nexus descended back to their level. "This is why humanity will serve as strategic integration specialists. They will help our species learn to fight together, instead of simply alongside each other." "But how do we know this will work in real combat situations?" asked Klex. "These were demonstrations and simulations. Actual warfare against real enemies is far more chaotic and unpredictable." Teho smiled the same quiet, confident smile he had shown on his first day at the station. "Champion Klex, chaos and unpredictability are exactly the conditions where human tactical methods work best. We specialize in situations where everything goes wrong and the original plan becomes useless." "What do you mean?" Shikith asked. "We call it Murphy's Law," Commander Yuki explained. "Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, usually at the worst possible moment. Human military training assumes that every plan will fall apart, so we train our soldiers to keep adapting until they find something that works. Most species develop detailed battle plans based on their known capabilities," Teho added. "When those plans fail, they often struggle to recover. Humans develop general objectives and then improvise methods to achieve them as conditions change." General Vorth considered this. "So when unexpected problems arise, human commanders do not become confused or paralyzed. They simply adapt, and help everyone else adapt with them," Hajun confirmed from the observation area. "That is what Earth offers to the Galactic Defense Corps, not another type of specialist, but the ability to help all specialists work together more effectively." High Chancellor Nexus raised his hands for attention. "The decision is final. Earth is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Defense Corps with the rank of Strategic Integration Specialist. Human officers will be assigned to coordinate multi-species operations and develop new combined tactical doctrines. He paused and looked directly at Teho. Champion Teho, you will serve as the first human integration specialist, with the authority to coordinate training between species and develop new cooperative combat techniques. The arena erupted in discussion as alien representatives realized the full implications of this decision. Humans would not be following orders from Galactic Command, they would be helping to create those orders. As the formal ceremonies concluded and beings began to disperse, General Vorth approached Teho privately. "Human," the crystal giant said, his voice much quieter than usual. "I owe you an apology. I judged your species based on appearance and assumed that physical power was the only measure of warrior capability." "No apology needed, General," Teho replied. "Your assumptions were reasonable based on your experience. Most species do rely primarily on their natural advantages, but you do not. We cannot. We have to find other ways to succeed." General Vorth extended one massive crystal claw in what Teho recognized. 6 months after the trials at Nexus Prime, the galaxy faced its first major crisis since humanity had joined the Galactic Defense Corps. The emergency alert reached every military installation simultaneously, carrying a priority level that had not been used in over a century. The Devourers had returned. High Chancellor. Nexos convened an emergency council session aboard the massive command ship Eternal Vigilance as it moved toward the threatened sector. Representatives from every major species gathered in the war room, their faces showing the kind of fear that even galactic champions rarely displayed. "The situation is critical," Nexos announced to the assembled commanders. "A Devourer fleet has emerged from deep space and is moving toward the Kepler system. 3 billion civilians need immediate evacuation, but our conventional tactics have proven ineffective against their adaptive defenses." General Vorth, now wearing new insignia marking his cooperation with human integration protocols, stood to address the council. "Chancellor, our forces have engaged the Devourers twice in the past week. Each time they adapted to our weapons and tactics within hours. By the second engagement, our energy weapons were completely useless against their shields." Commander Shikith flickered into solid form at the tactical display. "Stealth infiltration has also failed. The Devourers appear to exist partially outside normal space-time, making phase-based attacks impossible to target effectively. And psychic assault proved equally futile," added Mindloss, her mental voice carrying undertones of frustration. "Their minds operate on frequencies that our abilities cannot reach. It is as if they think in dimensions we cannot access." The war room fell into grim silence. The Devourers were an ancient enemy that appeared every few centuries to consume entire star systems. No single species had ever successfully defeated them in direct combat. Previous victories had required massive sacrifices and usually involved abandoning entire sectors of space. Ambassador Ha-Jun, now serving as Earth's senior integration advisor, spoke quietly from his position at the human delegation table. "What do we know about their adaptation methods?" Admiral Thex pulled up tactical recordings from the previous engagements. "They analyze our weapons during combat and develop countermeasures in real time. Energy-based attacks become useless within minutes. Physical projectiles are deflected by adaptive barriers. Even our most advanced tactical coordination is countered once they observe our patterns." "How long do we have before they reach the Kepler system?" asked Teho, who had been studying the enemy fleet movements on his personal display. 18 standard hours at their current velocity," replied the tactical officer. "Evacuation of 3 billion people would require at least 40 hours under optimal conditions." The mathematics were simple and terrifying. The Devourers would arrive long before the civilians could escape. High Chancellor Nexos turned to the human delegation. "Strategic Integration Specialist Teho, this is exactly the kind of crisis we hoped your methods could address. Do you see any approach that our traditional tactics have missed?" Teho stood and walked to the main tactical display. For several minutes he studied the sensor data from both failed engagements, analyzing weapon effectiveness, fleet movements, and the Devourers' adaptive responses. "The problem is not that we lack sufficient firepower," he said finally. "The problem is that we are fighting them the way they expect to be fought." "What do you mean?" asked General Vorth. "Look at these adaptation patterns. Tejo indicated specific data points on the display. The Devourers counter our tactics by analyzing what we do and developing defenses against those specific actions. But they are analyzing based on what they expect military forces to do. He turned to face the assembled commanders. What if we do not fight them like a military force at all? Mindloss leaned forward in her floating chair. Explain. Every engagement so far has followed standard galactic military doctrine. Coordinate fleet movements, concentrate firepower, use species-specific advantages in organized attacks. The Devourers have seen this approach from dozens of civilizations over thousands of years. They know how to counter it. Tejo pulled up a new tactical display showing the Kepler system. But what if instead of trying to defeat their fleet in space combat, we make space combat irrelevant to achieving our objective? Commander Shiketh flickered uncertainly. The objective is to protect the civilian population. We cannot do that without stopping the Devourer fleet. Can we? Tejo asked. Or can we protect the civilian population by making it impossible for the Devourers to find them? The war room buzzed with confused discussion until Ambassador Hajun stood to clarify his colleagues' thinking. Tejo is suggesting that we approach this as a rescue operation rather than a military engagement. Instead of trying to destroy an enemy we cannot defeat, we focus entirely on saving the people we are meant to protect. High Chancellor Nexos's ancient features show deep thought. Continue. Tejo manipulated the tactical display to show detailed scans of the Kepler system. The Devourers consume civilizations by feeding on organized populations and their infrastructure. But what if there was no organized population to find? What if the entire system appeared to be completely abandoned? You want us to evacuate 3 billion people in 18 hours? Admiral Thex's voice carried deep skepticism. That is impossible with our current fleet capacity. No, Tejo replied. I want us to evacuate 3 billion people without the Devourers realizing. We are doing it. He began outlining a plan that was unlike anything in galactic military history. The evacuation will happen in 3 phases, coordinated by different species using abilities the Devourers have never seen combined before. Phase 1. Commander Shiketh's Kalari teams will use phase shifting to move small groups of civilians into pocket dimensions that exist parallel to normal space. The Devourers cannot consume what they cannot detect. Shiketh studied the proposal. Possible, but we can only maintain pocket dimensions for limited periods, and the energy requirements would be enormous. Which brings us to Phase 2, Tejo continued. Mindloss and her Tauran psychics will create false mental impressions of normal civilian activity throughout the system. The Devourers will sense what appears to be a thriving population going about their daily lives, while the real population hides in phase-shifted dimensions, Mindloss said, understanding beginning to show in her glowing eyes. But for how long? Phase 3. General Vorth's Vraxian engineering teams will construct what appears to be normal infrastructure and defensive installations using crystalline holographic projections. From the Devourer's perspective, the system will look exactly like every other populated system they have consumed. General Vorth's crystal features reflected growing excitement. We create a completely false civilization for them to attack while the real population escapes through methods they cannot perceive. But how do we maintain the deception long enough for actual evacuation? Asked Admiral Thex. Tejo smiled. We do not maintain it. We let them win. The war room fell silent as everyone tried to process this statement. The Devourers will arrive, detect what appears to be a normal populated system, and begin their consumption process. While they are focused on consuming a holographic civilization that exists only in pocket dimensions, the real evacuation fleet will move the actual population to safety using routes that circumvent the combat zone entirely. Commander Yuki, who had been quietly calculating logistics, stood to address the group. The timing would have to be perfect. If the Devourers realize they are consuming illusions before the evacuation is complete, then we have backup plans, Tejo replied. Multiple redundant deceptions, alternative evacuation routes, and contingencies for every possible failure mode. The key is that no single point of failure can compromise the entire operation. High Chancellor Nexos had been silent throughout the presentation, but now his voice carried a note of amazement. You are proposing that we defeat the Devourers not by fighting them, but by giving them exactly what they want, while secretly ensuring that what they want does not actually exist. More than that, Hajun added, we are using the combined abilities of multiple species in ways that create entirely new tactical possibilities. Phase shifting, psychic projection, crystal engineering, and human coordination working together to achieve something none of them could accomplish alone. The plan that emerged over the next several hours was the most complex multi-species operation in galactic history. Kalari phase warriors would create temporary pocket dimensions throughout the Kepler system. Tauran psychics would project false mental signatures to make those dimensions appear normally populated. Vraxian engineers would construct holographic infrastructure that would convince sensors the system was thriving. Meanwhile, human coordinators would manage the timing and logistics of moving 3 billion people through evacuation routes that had been designed to be completely invisible to devourer detection methods. As the eternal vigilance approached the Kepler system, every species was performing roles they had never attempted before, guided by human tactical principles that treated the impossible as merely difficult. 18 hours later, the Devourer fleet arrived to find what appeared to be a perfectly normal populated star system, completely unaware that they were attacking elaborate